So Bernard, for those who may not know you quite well, who would you say Bernard is and what does Bernard do?
My name is Bernard Avle. I work as a broadcast journalist, City FM, City TV. I'm also the general manager of the station. I've been doing media for, my whole life, since age 20 or something. So I use communication tools to try and bring change to society, particularly using the medium of radio and television, and sometimes online. Yeah, so that's who I am.
What is your view on global trends regarding climate change, conflict and peace, and quality education?
As we speak, there are so many things happening within West Africa. Look, I was reading somewhere that there are over 12,000 conflicts situations in the past few months or something in the sub-region. Russia-Ukraine war has not ended. We're talking about the Gaza war. The truth is that the world has always been violent, and there's always people who would try and use force to attain their ends. So I'm not sure I've studied the trend, but the truth is that there are still a lot of people who are displaced by conflict everywhere in the world. And it's troubling. Even within our country, Ghana, if you go to Boko, there are people who are struggling. This morning, we heard on the news, people kidnapped in parts of West Africa. 3 West African countries have left ECOWAS. So there's a lot of things happening when it comes to conflict in the world. And it's a big trouble because there are lots of young people who are born into a situation that they did not anticipate, right? So yeah, conflict is a big, big challenge because in the absence of peace and security, you can't do much, right? So I think it's almost like the baseline for all kinds of development. So yeah, it's a troubling situation. Sometimes the way we discuss these things at a high level, it sounds like some very far away thing, but the truth is that even people have noticed that weather patterns have changed, right? Farmers are struggling. We went to the Volta region recently after the flooding incident to help people. And the truth is that food systems are troubled because of climate change. Weather patterns have become more erratic. There are many, many issues that we face that we may not know can be traceable to climate change. But if you really want to be true to the facts, climate change is a reality, all right? And for me, the effects on the vulnerable is the issue. A lot of these problems that we discuss in the world, wealthy countries and wealthy people have found ways. For example, energy transition, right? Advanced countries have developed using dirty fuel. Now they're telling developing countries that, well, you have to go green. And it's not a bad thing, but people want to develop. So we have to find ways of having what is called just transitions, where we will not lose out on industrialization just because now there's too much carbon in the world. And these are issues that must be discussed on a more serious level. We're talking about fossil fuels, right? We're exposed to the petrodollar. Currencies are falling because of the dependence on imported crude oil. So yes, we must move to electric vehicles. But how are we structuring things like getting lithium? How are we making it easier to get these batteries to power these cars? How are we making these vehicles more affordable? These are all very important questions we must address. But when people don't have food to eat, they don't have a place to sleep. These things sound very far away, which is why sometimes we must use mediums like the radio, television, and some of these things to bring the matters closer to people, that it is a reality. Now, the fact that you deny it or the fact that you don't know about it does not mean it cannot kill you. That's the thing. So we have to get informed about these things in a way that will help us to tackle them in our own small way, and also to support collective action to tackle them on a bigger platform. I think the biggest topic I discuss on my show is education. Probably, when I put out an education topic, you get a lot of people discussing it. Free SHS was a big policy decision. Now they are talking about how do we make education more equitable and better quality. And there's a lot of discussion around it. Globally as well, there are lots of kids outside school, right? There are so many children in many parts of the world who haven't even seen a classroom before. Meanwhile, we know that when you put people in the classroom, in fact, when you empower particularly girls with education, they tend to have more control of their bodies. They would have sex they won't have sex early, so they don't get pregnant early. They can have more control of the number of kids they have, and they'll live longer. So there are relationships between education and general well-being, healthcare. All these things are interrelated. And we have to start engaging these questions on how do we ensure that people remain in school and get a quality education. Again, Africa is being left behind. I was reading a data recently that if you look at the top paying or the top ranking educational outcomes in STEM, Africa is nowhere near the top 50. Like Japan, Russia, and all these places, they're doing very, very well. So we haven't been able to address the quality question collectively as a continent, and even in Ghana as well. So there's a need to focus on transitioning from getting people access to school to now looking at how do they get a quality education which is fit for the world that we are in. The world in 2024 is not the same as the world in 1924. The world in 2124 will be a very different world because there's so much information now. If we are not training people to have the knowledge and the skill and the soft skills to deal with the complexities of the modern world, we're going to be left behind. So I think the question of quality education must become the center of all discussions on education, not just in Ghana, but in sub-Saharan Africa. And other stakeholders, not just politicians, must get involved. So the schools, the teachers, the parents, the media, civil society, private sector must all get involved in how do we deliver a fit for purpose education for our children so they can also create the next big things in the world, solve our medical problems, solve environmental pollution, climate change. All these things require good education, an empathetic, well-rounded, honest education to bring those solutions, which I think is an important platform to discuss on this interview.
And what are the dangers of keeping at these trends, in your view?
Look, there are good things happening in the world, right? So I'm not trying to say that everything is bad, all right? So if you look at knowledge, for example, knowledge has increased significantly in the past 100 years. Okay, so there's a lot of good things happening, but the truth is that there's a big divide. Even when it comes to economics, in Ghana, GDP has gone up, but the gap between the rich and the poor has gone up. And you can say the same for many countries. So the real problem is not the fact that we don't have enough resources. The real problem is that we are distributing the resources in a very skewed manner. So we have to rethink how do we give access to people who are at the lower end to get quality education, quality healthcare, and access to many things. I was reading recently, they were talking about the fourth highest killer in Africa and the second largest killer of women in cancer is cervical cancer, right? And it's growing rapidly. If we don't do anything about it, we're going to have big, big problems. Malnutrition is still a big issue. I was looking at the data recently between Ghana, Niger, Ghana, Sierra Leone and Chad. Sierra Leone and Niger have about 41% of people living below the poverty line. Ghana's about 25%. Think about that. 25% of Ghanaians are in extreme poverty. That's serious, all right? And there's even something now the statistical service calls multi-dimensional poverty. So it's not just poverty of finance. But also you earn less than $1 a day, so you are poor. Now you can earn less than $1 a day, not have access to good drinking water, not have peace to sleep, and have sickness on top of it. So there's a lot of multi-dimensional poverty. I even think that the way we measure these things ought to change. It must be more qualitative, not just quantitative. So don't just tell me GDP has grown by 10%. We have X number of people gone to school. What's the quality of the schooling we are getting? So one of the things we need to do is to move away from quantitative measures to qualitative measures. And I think the multidimensional poverty is a great, great way of looking at it. So if these trends continue, our children will not have a future. I think the challenge of every generation is to make sure that those who come after you have a better chance than those who you took over from. So my kids, right, when I was in the University of Ghana in the year 2000 to 2004, there were 4 of us in an outer room and 1 person in the inner room. And we all had a picture. So there were 8 people in that room. When my father was in the university, like 30 years before me, there were only 2 in a room and they were served breakfast, right? So I think his generation failed. Now, if my children go to Legon and they have to still struggle with the same mess I struggled with, then I failed. So my job is not to just win a big election, speak big English and say, I've done well for myself. You must create a society that's better for those who take over from you, which is the failure of this generation of leaders. They always talk, when I interview them, when we're in Legon, they used to serve us jollof. We used to wear, like, you are not even serious. You are telling me that you had a better education than I did, and you left a crazy, dysfunctional, very, very decrepit university for me to learn, and you're telling me you're better than me. You can't be serious. So the challenge of this generation of leaders is to make sure that what we create for the next generation is better. A leader makes today's impossibilities tomorrow's realities. That's what a leader is. So the people who are below 35 must have a better future than those of us who are above 35. And that is supposed to be what we create. Not blame them and say they are not serious, they don't work hard. It's we, those who are in charge, who have failed them. And that's what we have to talk about. That's the main issue. All right. It's not about we had a good education, everything was okay, but you guys are not serious. No, we have failed them, and we must make sure our children get a better chance to succeed. Africa must not continue begging. When you are traveling abroad, you don't need to go and beg for a visa to some funny country because you are black. We must gain respect, and to gain respect, our leaders must stop going for all these conferences that don't address anything and do the hard work of making ourselves food sufficient. We must be able to feed ourselves. We have the Akosombo Dam, we have the Volta Lake, the third largest man-made in the world. Yet we import over $300 million worth of rice. There's something wrong with us. If we don't fix those issues, if we don't decolonize our minds and our spaces, and use all the tools we have to bring development, we'll just be the offscoring of the world for the next 100 years. And I don't want to be part of that. So let's get serious. Let's get serious in tackling Africa's problems and stop making excuses.
That's very interesting thoughts. What are your final words to our audience?
Get informed, because you see, you only do what you know. So if you are ignorant, you can't make any change. So you need to get informed. So if you're a young person, read, listen, read history, try and understand where we've come from, try and understand who we are as Africans. Right? It's very important to understand what happened, colonialism, slave trade, economic history. The history of everything is important. So get informed. If you're not informed, you're not going to make any difference. But information is not enough. Knowledge is not power. It is applied knowledge as power. So you need to now get involved. There are people who do things. So organize yourself into something. Form an NGO. Go and teach kids. Join vacation. Do something. Don't just be a docile citizen who's just whiling away life. Bad people are always conspiring to create more misery. Good people want to work alone. It's not going to happen that way. So if you find somebody doing something good, go and support them. Join a group. Become a citizen. Become an activist. In ancient Greece, there were 3 groups of people. People who think only of themselves. They are idiots. Those who think only of their friends and family. They are tribesmen. It's those who think of others, who say, I am because you are. They are citizens. So a citizen is not somebody who votes. A citizen is somebody who thinks of other people and works with them to bring change. So be a citizen. So get involved. All right. And then get inspired. You need things like this. This platform is a great platform, right? Where we use music and art and all these things to try and bring change. So there are inspirational. Life is not just about politics and those things, right? There are creativity is also part of what we do to bring change. All right, we need to take over our creative spaces, the arts, the kind of things that Chief Mumin is doing, retelling the African story. Because development is not just GDP and roads and buildings and houses. Development is also mindsets and culture and music and art and fashion and pride and wisdom and faith. That's also development. So we've had this idea that let's build buildings like China so we are developed. No, we must have pride in who we are. We must support our teams. Do you get it? If you don't have that, you can't develop. And we need to take over those spaces for young people to believe that if you're a Ghanaian, it means something. If you're black in the world, there's a place for you. These are the issues you should be dealing with. So get informed, get involved, get inspired. All right, those are the 3 things I'll say. If you do that and you work with other people, you don't try to be a hero by doing everything yourself. If you work with other people, support causes like this cause I'm supporting. I don't know them, never met them. All right, but they want to create a better world. It's a good campaign. Let's do it. Let's get it done. Watch the video, share with somebody. All right, discuss it. Do a Twitter space. Talk about what you've seen. If you see a good thing happening, discuss. If you see a bad thing, expose it. Don't be quiet, because if we don't want to just die because like we have no agency. We have agency. We have power. We are part of the solution to Africa's problems. So get inspired, get informed, get involved.
This is Love Race Music, promoting a better world through music. I am Roberta McAfee Robertson.